So apparently we've got a new poll on how the January 6 hearings are impacting Americans. It says the January 6 hearings had virtually no impact on changing public views, according to a new poll. Oh, they put it at prime time and everything. What a sham that is. If you want to talk about a monkey trial, a show trial, putting the committee and putting it on live at 8 o'clock at night, prime time, just so it gets more views. Disgusting and in total desperation. But let's get to this poll. A Monmouth University poll shows that almost 90% of respondents report that the hearings have made no change in how they view the January 6th riot. So the hearings are just a complete sham waste of time. Many of these Democrats, they know Biden has been a disaster. He's got a horribly historic bad approval rating, and they're clinging at anything to try and change the narrative. That's why they made such a big deal about the Roe v. Wade thing. They were getting trounced in the new polls when it comes to the midterms. And then suddenly the Roe v. Wade thing comes out, and Republicans do what they always do, which is take power from the federal government and give it back to the states. And you've got Democrats saying they're taking all women's rights away because they're trying to fearmonger, and they're just getting crushed in these new 2022 midterm polls. And now the January 6th thing, it's total desperation. I mean, what reeks more of desperation than moving this to 8 o'clock prime time at night? This is a committee that is meeting at 8 o'clock for one reason, to try and get as many views as possible. It's a total Democrat committee, total bias, totally anti-American. And the general public just is not interested. It's a giant waste of time for all of these Democrats that are participating in it. We've got stuff, you can take a look at this. The public opinion before and after the hearings. January 6th was a riot. 65% before, after, it actually went down. It actually went down 1%. So basically no impact when it comes to that. This is Donald Trump's rating, or the amount of people that got polled. You can see very favorable, somewhat favorable, somewhat unfavorable. It really hasn't changed. I looked over it. I guess the very favorable went down a little bit, but the somewhat favorable went up a little bit. So overall, Trump's really hasn't changed. Of course, they raid Trump's estate in Florida, which really, I'm not understanding why the Democrats want to get Trump so bad. You'd think these people would realize facing DeSantis in 2024 is basically a guaranteed loss. At least with Trump, he's so divisive, he's so polarizing to many independent people. That's the guy you want to face if you're talking about Trump versus DeSantis. If it's DeSantis, you've got no chance. You're losing the state of Florida, you're losing the state of Ohio, and I would be shocked if DeSantis lost to any Democratic candidate they put up. Probably either Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom, because there's no way they run Biden again. Guys, the whole thing with Biden, the theory, Biden is going to step down after the midterms, probably early 2023. He'll say it's his health, whatever. We're already seeing CNN come out and say Biden's actually been doing a bad job because they've been getting talking points handed down to him from the Democratic establishment, and they're saying, listen, change the narrative. We're blaming Biden for everything. We're blaming Biden for the recession. That's why they were so desperate in trying to change the term recession. The word recession has such a meaning. It just is another talking point for Republicans to attack the Biden administration on. So they got desperate and they were like, let's just change the definition and say it's not a recession, which only made things worse. And now we're seeing the major Democratic networks change the entire narrative on Biden, and they're going to blame everything on Biden and say we're getting a new start. We're having a complete primary process and we're taking someone else, and the leaders right now, I would say Gavin Newsom, they're not going to pick Kamala. Guys, they wanted Kamala in 2020. She's a minority woman. They love that. The problem was Kamala was so historically bad and so unlikable in the debates. They're like, we're going to have to take the white dude, but to balance it out, we'll make Kamala the vice president, so at least we have a minority woman as the vice president. But Kamala is so unlikable, and the Democrats know she's so bad in the debates, there's no way they choose her. Biden's stepping down, and they're going to go through another ridiculous sham parade where they rig it with all those superdelegates like they did in 2020 with Biden. Biden goes into Super Tuesday basically with no chance, and he leaves Super Tuesday as the Democratic favorite to be their nominee because they just rig it with how they do the superdelegates. It's a completely corrupt system. But either way, guys, the January 6th stuff, it really is an insult to Americans' intelligence. I've said this before. January 6th was the Democrats' Reichstag fire. They needed a reason. It's always better to have a reason. Now, there's been a few times, and we've seen this with social media. Democrats aren't stupid. They know they control social media, but they want a reason to ban Donald Trump. They want a reason to silence people. Whether it's, the new thing is misinformation. That's why I hate the word misinformation. The word misinformation becomes a gateway word for someone to ban someone they don't like. And then why did you ban them? They're spreading misinformation. How do you know it's misinformation? We don't know. We just don't like them, so we're banning them, and we're saying it's misinformation as an excuse to ban them and stop their free speech. That's the big issue. That's why I get so angry when people throw around the word misinformation and disinformation. They're actively using those words to silence you on social media. And then we've got the whole thing. It's so funny how it was totally coordinated. January 6th, they circled the date and they made January 6th as bad as possible. I'm not saying Republicans weren't there and Trump supporters were certainly at the January 6th event in D.C., certainly. But you don't think for a second Democrats tried making that as terrible as possible? The worse it was, the more leverage Democrats gain politically. It's amazing for political points, and January 6th was the reason Donald Trump was silenced on all mainstream social media networks, and they all silenced him at the exact same time. What a coincidence. It's a coordinated thing. They knew they were silencing him weeks before. They said, this is the date, this is the event, get all the Trump supporters, get everyone angry, let them in, whatever. And that's kind of how that whole thing happened, and they tried making it as bad as possible. I'm saying, I know there were Trump supporters there, I understand it, but they made it as bad as possible to make Trump seem worse. And then they're like, oh, now we need to ban Trump off of these major social media platforms because he's inciting violence, because they want a reason. And there's actually a really good example of the Democrats panicking, not having a reason, and silencing something, the Hunter Biden story. The Republicans pull out a great October surprise on Hunter Biden late in October, right before the 2020 election, and Democrats panicked and said, listen, it's going to look really bad. It's going to look like we're communist China who's silencing stories to try and make sure our favorite candidate gets elected. But really, we don't care. And they silenced the story, and CNN goes along with it and says it's Russian misinformation, and the story turns out to be accurate. And it's not, they knew it could have been accurate. They knew there was a chance it was accurate, but it doesn't matter. So they want a reason. A good example of them not having a reason was the Hunter Biden story, because it was so late, right before the election. They said, listen, let's just ban the story. It's going to look bad, but it's whatever. Any sort of Democrat, these people can't even use their brain. They'll be like, yeah, it's Russian business. These are the same people that believed Russians helped get Trump elected into. How about this one? So there are still Democrats who believe that Trump is a Russian puppet. Okay, so if Trump is a Russian puppet, why would Vladimir Putin wait until Trump is out of office to invade Ukraine and face massive sanctions from the United States. Don't you think if Trump was working with Putin and Putin controlled Trump, which was the Democrats' great conspiracy of the 2016 election, don't you think that Putin would invade Ukraine while Trump was in office so the Americans could help or at least not sanction Russia if Trump is in Putin's pocket? It makes no sense, but nobody brings it up because they would be exposed. It is unbelievable, folks. It's lie after lie. And then they're like, oh, where's the election integrity? Where's, the democracy is under attack. What about after 2016 when they had no evidence and just blamed Russia and we had a 2-year sham Mueller report, millions of dollars wasted, thousands of hours wasted on absolutely nothing? They don't say it's the exact same thing. And at least with Trump, he can say, listen, there are other countries that literally ban mail-in ballots from their federal elections because mail-in ballots have rampant voter fraud. I'm not saying that's what happened. That's just the truth. Other countries do that. So that is the whole thing with that situation. But guys, you take a look at many of these people. I mean, the January 6 hearings, if you're a Republican, you're going to think, whatever, they're trying to make it as bad as possible. And if you're a Democrat, you already think Trump is Hitler, so what's going to change? Like, these are not going to do anything. They're not going to change anything if you don't present new evidence, which they're not doing. And it's a bunch of Democrats getting together saying how horrible it is. It's not going to change anyone's mind. It would be something if you had Republicans as well, but apparently the committee is just full of Democrats. I mean, how are we expecting these people to be impartial? It makes no sense. It's a total government waste of time. And the American people are just simply not buying it. You can take a look at the polls. They're not buying it. So guys, that is the situation with these hearings. They're prime time. These people are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to talk about something. Prime time, 8 o'clock, MSNBC, CNN, they're all having it, and it is absolutely changing nobody's opinion. Republicans think it's ridiculous, Democrats think Trump is Hitler, and nobody's opinion is going to change from this. So, unless they present new evidence, which they haven't done, it's the same Trump is evil, he incited it, but where's actually Trump saying, go storm the Capitol? Right? It's all about, oh, he incited it and we're going to ban him off Twitter for it. No, you're banning him off Twitter because you don't like him and you don't want him to be able to spread his message via your platform. You can admit you don't like the First Amendment Twitter, and Twitter technically actually has, when they say they're a private company, it's like, that's fine, but the American people have to understand Twitter doesn't believe in the First Amendment. They will ban you if they don't like how you're talking, if they don't like that you're spreading your message. That's not Democrat, because Twitter is controlled by the left. That's why Democrats threw a hissy fit when Elon Musk almost bought Twitter. And then, of course, he realized the major bot issues. Basically, if you interact with a random person, there's probably a 20% chance it is a bot on Twitter. The bot issues are out of control. They are. And Elon realized it, and he's like, I'm not doing this. It's ridiculous. You're claiming all these people are real users when they're bots. So we will see, guys. I still think the only possible way for social media, the way forward, is a totally independent platform that is run by people that have the idea and embrace discord between Democrats and Republicans. And yes, there does need to be moderation because we can't have people getting cyberbullied to death, and you can't be making death threats. But the idea that you can ban Donald Trump, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, they ban him the exact same time in a coordinated thing because they don't like him, and then they blame it on January 6th. January 6th was the Democrats' Reichstag fire. You need a reason, right? Hitler needs a reason for his people to hate the Soviets. You need a reason to ban Donald Trump, and that's your reason, and that's how you can sell it to the general public. We're not silencing his free speech. No, he incited violence. That's the reason we're doing it. You see how it works, guys? They're trying to trick people like, oh, we're just reacting to him when they were going to do it all along. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, D Jinx. Thank you for watching.